Welcome to our student panel following the debate. I'm Professor Joann Lee of the Communication Department and my colleague, Christine Kelly from Political Science. We are the faculty moderators of today's student panel. We've invited students from the Communication Department and Political Science to sit on the panel and discuss what we just heard. So first I'd like to introduce from the communication area, Danielle Romano, Megan Hohnadel, Danielle Abreu, Marina Bishara, Andrew Burns, Natalie Lolli. Welcome everybody. And we just spent an hour listening to some very interesting dialogue. So let's begin by sharing maybe one or two points that struck you the most in this entire debate. Let's start with Danielle.
Well, the one thing that I really took away from the debate is that I think Governor Christie, even though a lot of students and teachers might not really agree with a lot of his policies, I think he's very well spoken when he presents himself to the audience. I think that a big reason of why Barack Obama really made such an astounding mark on the public is because he is a very well speaker and he speaks his points and he knows what he's talking about, whereas someone like Barbara Buono and Romney kind of did nothing but bash the other candidate instead of focusing on one detailed thing, and that's what I took away from it.
Presence. Yes. What do you say, Marina?
I think I didn't entirely agree with everything Christie said, but I do have to admit that what he has done in the past 4 years, he did do a good job. I mean, not as well as anyone would hope, but I kind of got away that he did try to say, I mean, you're saying that I'm doing all this wrong, but at the same time, look at what I've done right, which was better than what Buono did when she kind of like bashed Christie, which isn't really, I don't know, I kind of got annoyed with that.
Okay, substance over rhetoric. Yeah. What do you say, Megan?
Well, what I found most, I think it was one of the first questions when he was directed a question about how he was really into the anti-bully campaign, and then they kind of let on that he's kind of a bully himself. And I really liked how he carried himself and what he had to say. He said that, you know, he speaks the truth and he's honest. And I mean, he is a politician. How honest can he really be? But in all honesty, I just felt him to be, throughout the whole debate, regardless of the issues, I felt he was very straightforward and he answered the questions, whereas Barbara Buono, she kind of dodged them or tried to put Christie down rather than bring herself up. She was very defensive.
Okay.
And that turned me off to her.
Strength in being direct. How about you, Andrew?
Well, I thought the content of the debate was very appealing to the younger audience. As a 24-year-old male college student, I felt that a lot of the issues that were addressed tonight are concerns in the 4 to 5 year outlook moving forward upon graduation. And I think I think I speak for most other college students of New Jersey that it was very appealing and very intriguing to our future to come in 4 to 5 year outlook.
All right, just to have a chance to see and hear what they think. What do you say, Danielle?
I thought that the debate was very entertaining. I did not find that there was much substance in it. I feel like both of them were just going at it with each other, talking about what I did, what I didn't do, but no one proposed any plans. I still felt like I walked away uninformed on what they both talked about we're going to create jobs by, cutting taxes. Cutting taxes for whom? Who's going to get, who's going to benefit from any of this? And neither of them really took time out to address any of that. They were just too busy attacking each other and trying to make little, zingers and
sound bites.
Yeah.
More call for substance. What do you say, Natalie?
I agree with Danielle. I feel as though that they kind of moved around the subjects a lot, although I did find a lot of issues that were brought up very appealing to the student youth. I heard marriage equality. I think that rung a bell for the LGBT community on campus. The higher education costs, the funding for that, I think that rung a bell for us. And I think hosting it here at William Paterson University helped to have the students engaged and felt like they were being addressed. So it'd be really interesting to see the student outcome.
Professor Kelly?
Yeah, greetings, everybody. You heard the governor say tonight that he wants everyone to vote and that he's looking forward to a strong voter turnout in the upcoming election. However, in 2009, the turnout was abysmally low in the state. It was the lowest in modern New Jersey history for a governor's race, 36%. Even more curious was the disappearance of the youth vote, which had been so strong in the 2008 presidential election. 636,000 young people voted, and only 120,000 came out in 2009. That's 180 less than previous gubernatorial races. So my question to you is, do you think that young people disappeared in 2009 for any specific reason? And do you think that they might stay home again? Or what might the two parties do to encourage young people to come out? Are they doing enough to reach young voters? And if you could suggest to them how to reach young voters to ensure we don't see what we saw in 2009, what would you tell them to do?
I feel as if that that the reason why students didn't come out so much in 2009 was they were just uninterested with the national campaign. They came out to vote for the president because the national election was advertised on social media. Everyone was talking about it in our schools. And so much for the gubernatorial debate in 2009, I didn't even know. I didn't know that was a thing.
I didn't.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I feel like now there might be a little bit better of a turnout just because they're holding the debates at schools. But at the same time, they should advertise on social media because we're all on our phones all the time. I'm pretty sure they're stuck to our faces.
Are you people saying that without social media, this generation is lost at the polls?
Absolutely.
No.
I disagree.
I think it's a story.
I think not us, but
But
kids that are
it's-
younger than us, absolutely.
No, but I think that's very chicken or the egg, which came first. They don't target younger audiences because in general in the past, the youth vote just didn't come out. So they're like, why are we going to spend our limited resources on this younger generation if they don't come out to vote? And then the younger generation are complaining now. They're like, well, we don't. And I think that now it's a bigger issue because Christie is a national celebrity.
Yeah.
And I think that that's going to bring out a youth vote. I think if he wasn't a national celebrity, if he wasn't who he was, most people don't even know who the governor of Pennsylvania is, and that's next door. So I think that because he is a national celebrity, yes, it helps that he's doing, these debates in colleges, but I think that has very little to do with it.
Do you think the two parties in New Jersey, both parties are living in the past in terms of how they communicate with this generation of voters?
Absolutely.
Definitely. They stay with TV and they stay on, I had to go look for the
Yeah,
campaign
me too.
information on their websites. I had no other way of knowing. They were on TV. I don't watch TV. I'm at college. Okay.
Well, I watch TV, but I don't watch TV as much as I'm on my phone or as much as I use the internet per se. Information is coming to us from so many different avenues electronically that I feel they could really hone that and use that to their advantage to get their information and their points of view across, rather than us seeking the information ourselves.
What message would you like to see from the candidates on your phones? What is it that will bring you out to the polls? Not just what medium through which that message be communicated, but what's the issue would drive you to the polls?
I feel clear statements on what they're going to do about higher tuition costs.
they
and the
dodged
range
it.
They dodged the questions. That's
They
fine.
didn't
I
really
wanted to
answer
ask
it.
you about that because I saw you all taking notes. Why don't we talk about the question of how they answered the question of higher education support, both candidates. How did you think Christie did? How do you think Buono did?
Horribly. Neither of them talked about how they would help decrease. First of all, Christie tried to take credit for the $1.9 billion referendum. That was a referendum on a vote in 2012.
referendum,
That was
yeah.
not something that he legislated or signed into office. So for him to take credit for that was just annoying.
Especially the fact that he sat on that $1.3 billion, and we're just seeing it now.
Exactly. And then the other thing was the problem with the student debt crisis isn't that, the college costs are so expensive is because banks, or not banks, but it's very easy to get loans. No matter what your credit line is, anybody can get a loan.
Yeah.
So that does not incentivize schools to reduce costs. I can make my school cost $50,000. They're going to get that loan if they can't afford it. So I think that there needs to be some sort of legislation to cap schools from increasing these costs, because that's the only way. It doesn't matter how much you can get from the government in loans or grants, because that comes from taxpayer anyways. You're going to pay for it in some end.
But let's look at the candidates' answers. Tonight, we just listened to them answer a slew of questions, and I believe pretty much that at the top of our thought processes as we listened was any cues into the question of how they would handle higher education. How did Buono do, in your opinion?
She said that it was a priority to her, but she didn't explain how she was going to, make,
she was gonna
decrease tuition. Because the William Paterson University student asked, tuition is really high. What are you going to do about it? And she said, tuition is it's a very high priority for me. I put myself through college and blah, blah, blah. But she didn't explain.
I felt like I was listening to more of
her background story.
Right, a background
commercial.
story of hey kids, I did it, you can do it too. Well, that's great, but if I don't get help, how am I going to do that and be successful?
She did that a lot, though, too.
Yeah,
She did.
like
She
the
showed
whole
how to
night.
let
Leave
so
you?
much.
I mean, how did this leave you, this question of higher education and support?
I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? Where am I going to stand? I'm putting myself through school myself, and I'm, thankful that I am, receiving financial aid. But if I can't find a job outside of school with the degree that I have put so much money towards, where am I going to end up? Am I ever going to pay it back, or is it just going to be another bill that's coming in the mail or something? Who knows what's going to happen? And that's just how I feel at this point, because I'm very close to graduating. So,
Speaking of jobs, I wanted to ask you what your reaction to the topic of raising the minimum wage. You all work, I'm assuming, and I'm curious. How much of a wage do you think you need to make it? What do you think the minimum wage should be?
well, the minimum wage right now is $7.25 an hour, right?
Yeah.
They want to raise it to $8.25. I think Christie's idea of doing, raising it $1, it is $1, and dollars add up over time.
That's over 3 years.
Over 3 years, he wants to do that. Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Right, but where do they, Buono was saying, well, the economy's down. Atlantic City is, even though people are going elsewhere to be gambling, where, people aren't going out because they don't have the money. Well, where are the businesses? If the businesses can't afford to pay these people because they're not making money, how can the minimum wage be increased? Where is the money going to come from? And then, the governor, Christie, he raised, tolls, let's say, on the Parkway. He raised fares. And I feel okay, well, there's a give and take. It's a balance system. It needs to come from somewhere. I feel like it's a vicious circle. People are going to get mad if they're being taxed for more money, but still they want more money.
Right.
So, where is it going to come from?
Buono just wants that, granted, satisfaction,
$1
right off the
right
bat.
now, yes, it
right.
would be nice, but where is it coming from?
Right, exactly.
But at the same time, if you pay attention to inflation, $8 is not what
It's
the
nothing.
wage
Oh, it's
should
not.
be. It should be up
It's
to
not.
$16 an hour.
Absolutely.
And everything should be okay, so they raised the minimum wage. Every other wage is going to stay the same. It's going to stay stagnant. It should all be raised.
Everything
Do
should
you,
go
do you
together.
should
really
go up.
do you believe that businesses,
That's a lie.
large corporations,
They're-
Larger
Verizon,
corporations.
can't afford to pay
No,
a few
I don't
dollars
think that's
more?
true.
I
No.
enjoyed Governor Chris Christie's answer to raising the minimum wage. He took the direction from the employee and brought it to, well, how are the small businesses going to do this? They're going to lose their jobs. They're going to lose their business. How will they afford it?
But that's
At the
what I
same
was
time,
saying, too.
That's
how
not
does
real.
the employee afford their meal every single week? How do their children afford to eat? How are they going to school and going to college in the next 4 years?
Well, the Economic Policy Institute said that an $8.25 increase, which, by the way, if you do raise it to $8.25, it's still unlivable in the state of New Jersey, would, I think, generate about $190 million worth of income to the state because, they can afford to buy these little extras. On top of which, what about all the welfare systems, Medicaid, Medicare? There's so much that the government spends. So we may not, they might not pay for it in the wage, but we pay for it in some way, shape, or form.
And that's exactly what Senator Buono said. She
Yeah.
said it comes out in the public assistance these people are on, the TAMP, the food stamps. You know, these people need to find food.
And there's a group of the New Jersey Main Street Alliance, which is 1,400 small businesses in New Jersey that have decided on their own to increase minimum wage for the workers and pay them a living wage. And they said that, you know, it's a lot, you know, they don't represent this large corporation view that
Well-
if you increase minimum wage, we're going to fire these people. It's a lie. It's just a threat.
Yeah.
I think that Christie's point really wasn't so much large corporations. He talked about the small business owner. And there are more small business owners in New Jersey than there are large corporations. So to that, what he was trying to bring into the mix, I think, was the balance of what it would do to the ecosystem in terms of paying out and
Right.
accounts receivable. Having said that, I think we can move on to another question, which goes beyond money to jobs. Where are you guys going to find your jobs if the minimum wage is pumped up another $1 pretty much overnight? How would that affect entry-level jobs? Because that's where the minimum wage kicks in first. Entry-level jobs. Have you thought of it that way? You know what I mean?
And what was addressed was the increase in the job sector within the private sector. The public sector has been cut. Teachers have been laid off. There's the employment has raised 2.2%, but where were those jobs created and who were those jobs created for? And I think Senator Buono brought that up, saying, who is this going to be for when they get out? It's not for me when I get out. When I get out, I'm going to get an entry-level job with a bachelor's degree. I'm going to go in and work my way to the top, hopefully to get to that private sector job that was created. But at the same time, it's not it's who is it going to?
But small businesses are basically, their main source of revenue are local people who also work within the community. So to say that if you increase a $1, you know, they might have 5, 10, 15 employees. So saying that raising $1, you know, the minimum wage for all these people, that if the entire community does it, that's more people with, money to buy goods and services within the community.
I feel like this argument could be, Christie could make the argument over 3 years if they were raising the minimum wage by more than $1. I mean, they're only raising it $1. I don't think that the way he's like over 3 years, it could be less than that. I mean, maybe if you raise the minimum wage by $5, I can see how it's taking time, but it's not, and it would end up like
$1 kicks in 3 years, the cost of living would
go
increased.
up.
The rate is higher than this increase, the percentage of income.
As New Jersey, as it is mentioned by the candidates, they both acknowledge that our location and our state is one of the highest states to just get buy-in. The cost of living is so high, with the minimum wage being what it is. How can you possibly, get even $10 an hour? Wouldn't even get you by a decent paying job with decent hours, with time to even have some downtime and put yourself through school. It is just too overwhelming, the cost of living versus the minimum wage consented that we have right now.
Cost of living is also expensive because property taxes are so high. So figure about what percentage of your income goes to rent. Most people in Jersey, like 60%, 70% of their income.
I'm sure most of us have had jobs with minimum wage, and if it wasn't for sole providers in our home, we wouldn't be able to live. I've waitressed, and it's not even minimum wage. It's $2.
The current minimum wage.
That's what I do now, and I'm barely getting by, and there's some days when I make a lot more than the minimum wage, you know what I'm saying, depending on my tips for that day, and I'm barely getting by then. And it could almost be 3 times as much.
Yeah.
When you raise the pool, the
Right.
wage pool, the concept of tips also changes. It really, there's a balance going on. Every time a wage is increased, it affects, it's like a ripple in a pool. So these are not easy answers, but it does affect students, especially as many students are working at minimum wage. at part-time jobs. And even as you go into the job market, these are huge issues.
There is greater income inequality in the state, and I think how we solve that issue was one of the sort of questions, I think, across all the issues that were really brought up tonight. And I think we did see a difference between the two parties about how do we create prosperity and jobs. Do you think you got satisfying answers about what is the process by which you create prosperity and close the income inequality gap where there are not so many people struggling and with a very few at the top living well beyond?
You know, it was interesting because I think Barbara Buono kept trying to go at Christie with, he's only for taxes for the rich. That was a constant theme in every response. And his response to her was always, well, look at what I did. I mean, it seemed to be kind of here at different levels of responses. Well, how do you see that?
I mean, I feel like whenever she kept coming at him with that, she'd say, I want to build the middle class out, and I want to keep expanding on the middle class. Okay, but how? How are you going to do that? It's like she had these set one-liners to keep saying. Like, she kept saying Romney trickle-down failure, like stuff like that. She had one-liners, and it wasn't answering anything.
Do you think that's a good idea, despite the fact that you may not have heard detailed plans? Did you feel like you heard at least differences that distinguish the candidates on the issues that affect your lives? Do you think that's a good idea to build from the middle class out?
Yeah, but could she do it? Is it even possible? How is she going to do it?
Right.
In 4 years? It's crazy.
Let me ask, how many of you have visited either of the candidates' websites or engaged in social media or research about their platforms?
Well, today I was on both candidates' websites, and it seemed like, and obviously through the debate, it seemed like Barbara Buono was a bit of a micromanager. She kind of wanted her hands on everything. She wanted to get her hands dirty, whereas Christie kind of has sat back. He has some success under his belt with the three budgets that have been passed, and he has just sit back and taken a CEO role and appeased his employees and trusted his employees to do the right job and to do the right things for his foundation and for the foundation of New Jersey.
Okay, and some other observations on the websites?
Well, I mean, not so much geared towards the sites, but a little bit more into the debate. What I overall get from Christie is that he exudes this almost like a cockiness. Like, he's very assertive, and like what Andrew was saying, he almost takes on this role of CEO where he thinks that the people who are working for him and working with him are going to do the right thing. And while for me as a voter, yes, that is something I want to see. I want to see people who are struggling and who are working in there to do better things for me as a student, for everyone's families. Barbara Buono, at the same time, just kind of, again, had like those one-liners, didn't really make it seem like she wanted to focus on one thing to help and go in one direction. She micromanaged. She was all over the place, trying to make it seem to you that she's going to do all these great, wonderful things without actually explaining to you how she's going to accomplish them. And that's what I think kind of came out more in the debate.
Isn't that the nature, though, of a challenger who doesn't have a track record, whereas the governor can say, because I've been in office? So, and not to make excuses for either candidate, but just to suggest, isn't it harder for a challenger to say, this is how it's going to go, because they haven't been there yet? At the same time, I guess I want to ask again, did you feel like you heard differences that were substantial enough on issues that affect your lives that you could feel closer to one candidate or the other? Did you like some ideas and proposals, and will it lead you to do more research about where, in fact, the candidates stand in detail?
I think the major difference in which I heard was their economic policies, is what they wanted to do regarding taxes. How, if they were going to raise taxes, lower taxes, where it was going to go and who it was going to apply to. And I felt that Senator Buono brought off that she wanted to strengthen the middle class. And by doing that, she wanted to stop taxing them and possibly, push the millionaire tax, which we know Governor Christie vetoed. And he brought it down and said that and we did business cuts and we had corporation tax cuts and all of that. So I feel like the economic differences were really appealing to me because I've been lower income, my entire family, my entire life. So to hear that the middle class is going to get some attention definitely appealed to me, and to have those tax cuts stop, because in the same time, we do need to budget. We do need to find the income. And if we keep having the tax cuts for the wealthiest that you were addressing, the top 1% versus, New Jersey, we have the wealthiest and the poorest cities. Like, we have the wealthiest county and the poorest counties out of the entire United States. That income equality needs to be addressed, and I think that really came apparent within this debate between the candidates.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel in the overall questions posed to both candidates that those questions enabled Christie to step up to the plate more? Or did you feel that in the way both candidates responded, one ended up having the upper hand for any particular reason? And that's almost tonal in nature, the tones and the approach that both candidates took the questions and answered them.
I feel Christie was much more confident in his answers. He knew exactly what to say, how to say it, where he was going with each answer to. He had that way about him that when he spoke, I listened and I believed him. Even though some of the things that he said, as in the 1.3 billion, the referendum, all that stuff, for a second, I was talking to her, I was just like, wait, what, he did that? And she's like, no, that was, we all voted on that, the presidential election. I was like, oh yeah, I guess he kind of casted a spell on me, and I had to be brought back down to earth. But he had that aura about him that he is very confident in his words and his word choices and what he was saying. And that kind of swayed me in a way also, because,
So are you suggesting that style matters more
Absolutely.
than
Yeah.
content?
That's always been.
And
Always.
could your impressions about how well the candidates did be just a matter of style? And was Governor
For some
Christie, in
people-
fact, more detailed than
For some
Buono?
people, that's the way that they vote, which is a scary reality.
But we know that's
Yeah.
not a great idea.
No, it's not. It's a terrible idea.
We know that's not a, so I'm suggesting to you, what are the critical thinking skills you employ as William Paterson University students soon to graduate? What have we taught you that allows you to pull back from the stylized, mesmerizing, folksy way of any candidate who may in fact be not be addressing the issues you really want, and you're reacting against someone just because of personal style?
Reacting for as opposed to against.
Or there was a
this
strong
case, yeah.
against, I think, expressed in the first two rounds of questions here about Buono's style. That it sounds like you were reacting about her bashing and negative and certain elements of her personal style. And there's a sense that she was not as detailed as Christie. I guess I'm asking you, put on your critical thinking caps. Is that true?
I don't think that she was less detailed than him. Neither of them had any details in the debate. He's just more assertive. She's very, she's a lot of, I felt like she was a little scared, and she came off scared and very defensive and a little jittery.
Yeah, she
How
seemed
about-
intimidated, and repeating the same thing over and over does not qualify your content.
And she kept saying them, and she wanted to expect us to believe them.
Okay.
And Christie had this way about him.
We're going to have to wrap this up as we're running out of time. So I'd like to thank the panelists, thank my colleague, Professor Kelly, the Communication Department, Political Science Department, and especially IRT for doing such a fabulous job tonight. And I'm Joann Lee. Please remember to vote. Good night.